All right, welcome everyone to the HVAC 2.0 show. And we are in the middle of our ventilation series. Tonight we are talking about ventilating dehumidifiers and their pros and cons. So we've got a couple of the gang with us, and I see two faces sitting there next to each other. Abby, don't you live like in Canada? What the hell are you doing with Jeff?
Not anymore.
They wouldn't have you either, huh? It's
I
a Canadian, dude.
I went
What'd
on
you
a
do?
ride along with Jeff today, and anyone that would listen to me, I told them the nation of Canada has sent me as an emissary to the great state of Indiana, so I can learn Jeff's secrets and take it back to my people.
Well, and I'll see you here soon enough too. So, Abby's on a goodwill tour. Apparently, the Canadians needed some help. We aren't done blaming Canada yet. And we got Tanner and Jeff as well. So, and of course, TK up top. All right,
Hey, everyone.
So, let's dive into this thing. So this is the ventilation series that we're in the middle of. So first week we talked about the basics, sucking, blowing, sucking, blowing. Last week we talked about the case against ERVs. We are not big fans. We think it's a waste of money. This week we are going to talk about ventilating dehumidifiers, which can both filter and dry outdoor air. So that's a good thing, but they have pros and cons. We're going to walk through that. Next week we're going to talk about pressurization. And basically answer the question, are we going to blow up a house by blowing air into it? And then the last week, we're going to talk about the magical thing called reheat dehumidification. So we got to start with a little clip, right? So this is from Happy Gilmore, which everybody here except for Tanner probably knows well. Tanner, hopefully we'll fix you of that problem.
I've seen that many times.
Okay, good. So this is a scene of how I think a lot of people end up treating air quality problems.
This is perfect. You're gonna make friends in no time. Just eat that! Leave us alone! This is perfect. You're gonna make friends.
Yeah, as usual, I have trouble flipping through it. So I view that like the old ladies to client, like, please just help me, get me out of here, do whatever. You're just like blue lights, dehumidifier, whatever. You just start throwing crap at them, and that's not the way to do things.
Electronic air filters.
Oh yeah. So give me some of that bipolar ionization, baby. No, don't do that. So just a quick review of what we've tackled thus far. We built the case that every house needs fresh air because shoulder seasons mean that there isn't any stack effects. There isn't any temperature difference, which means there's no flow of outdoor air coming in, and that leads to stank in a house. So about half the year we spend in pretty moderate temperatures where we can have humidity issues, but oftentimes there's not much cooling load. So being able to keep a house dry is super important. And I've gotten some pushback from some of my West Coast friends who don't know what humidity is. But 80% of Americans live in a humid climate. So there's a line. And when we did a couple of trips across this line, man, it is night and day. I remember coming back from Yellowstone and we crossed from Wyoming into Kansas, and we got out of the car. I'm like, something feels really, it's humid. It was just in a couple of hours we drove over the line. So it's a very hard line. And the vast majority of Americans live here. I've got another slide coming up from Ken Gehring. I'll explain that more. But fresh air from the outside, if every house needs fresh air, it needs to be both filtered and dry. And we've been working through everything. Hey, Jason, what's up? Talking about sucking, blowing, or sucking and blowing using Spaceballs and Megamade. And so the first week we crossed sucking off the list of things that are a good idea, at least from a whole home perspective. Like it says up here, you want to suck in kitchens and bathrooms. Where the pollutants are made, get them out from where the pollutants are made. Don't circulate them through the house and then pull them out. Suck them out where they are. Last week, we tackled ERVs, which are sucking and blowing or balanced ventilation, and walk through the case of why they're really just a horrible way to spend money. And if you don't need Samuel L. Jackson to describe how cold your winters are, you don't need one. And then we actually did the math on that. And even then, I don't know that you need one. Pipe some air in and just heat and cool it. So in the middle for pressurization, we're going to discuss ventilating dehumidifiers, which is one of the tools that we do use on projects pretty often. Not always, but pretty often. So they have pros and cons, and we're going to walk through those. And just like we were talking about last week, this is odds of results. So you want to get to where you've got good odds of things happening, but you actually want somebody to buy it. So if you live on the bad side where you don't have good odds of things happening, this is traditional contracting, and this is sucking. Sucking sucks. You're pulling air from places you don't want to breathe. I'm going to show you a couple examples here in this slide deck, actually, where we replaced those systems with dehus, ventilating dehus. On the other side, you got sucking and blowing. Nobody does this. Like ERVs and HRVs are not big sellers, which means when they do get sold, they get installed wrong, which we looked at last time. So this is just not a good broad market option. So in the middle, that leaves us blowing, which we're going to talk about one of those methods tonight. So this is a ventilating dehumidifier. This is the Santa Fe 155 model. I have this exact unit, but they have changed names. It was called the Ultra Air. But this is what they look like. So there's a filter. You can just see this right here is a thing where you put your finger in and you pop the filter door off to change the filter. And it has a MERV 13 filter in it, which is quite good. You can't do a whole heck of a lot better without a lot of flow restriction. So it's got a good filter. So you get fresh air, filtration, and dehumidification all in one. So the whole thing's a dehu. You've got good filtration. It brings air into the smaller duct here, which is the outdoor air intake. And then the larger duct is air coming from the house, wherever that comes from. And then this goofy oval thing, which is a real nightmare to buy the fitting for. Ask me how I know, because I have one. This blows air out to the house. So here is our hypothesis. This is how we view ventilating dehumidifiers. So these are a really good fix if you aren't replacing equipment. If you are replacing, strongly consider systems that have reheat dehumidification. That's really kind of the best way to tackle that sort of thing. And we also think that on every job, if you live in a green grass climate, which Ken Gehring, Teddy Bear, we'll introduce you to him in a minute. He's the one that coined that. If you live in a green grass climate where if you don't have to water the lawn and it stays green, you're in a humid climate. And we think they should always be offered. So basically, this is good if you're using it as a Band-Aid. If you're not, consider something else. And then always offer them whenever you are selling a system. Because you always want to be doing offering and declining. You want to give people the option and let them decline. And that way, if there's a problem later, well, would you like to buy the dehu now? You don't have to feel like you have to go put one in for free. So this is Ken Gehring, and we have Ken in large part to thank for the ventilating dehumidifier. And he actually did a presentation on how that whole thing came about. But TK up top has gotten to know Ken through the years because he is on HVAC Talk, which is a great place for some really highly detailed technical discussions. And he is Teddy Bear on there. He's a good guy. And he was just on a panel, which is worth watching. So this was the HVAC-R training symposium in Florida back in January. And he did a great presentation with Andy Osk as well. And it was kind of funny because it's two old guys who get together for lunch, and they actually came up with a new way of ducting dehumidifiers because Andy decided he was going to break a dehumidifier. And it turned out it didn't break it. It actually made it work better. So old guys arguing at lunch. But this was one slide from that deck, and I asked Nikki Kruger, who's heads up their sales and tech support. And this is a map of the United States, and it's taken Friday, September 22nd. Note how high dew points are in the whole country. So this is getting, this is fall here, so we should be getting out of summer temperatures. We still have very high dew points in most of the country in the 70-degree range. This is happening more and more. We're seeing higher dew points lasting longer for a big chunk of the country. And so I thought this was a really good slide that Ken had put up. So whenever we're above 55, there's some dehumidification load. It's not like 54.9, you're fine. 55, it's call the ambulance, but it's important. And then this surprised me today. So I posted about dehumidification, and my friend Justin Bright hopped in and said in California, 2 houses in a utility program pilot had been converted to all mini splits. Long story short, the uncontrolled indoor humidity was so bad they had to demolish 2 homes and rebuild them. And I'm like, whoa, where? And he said, I forget the city, but it was a dry Southern California climate. So just because you're in a dry climate doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to pay attention to humidity control. Because if you have a tight house where people are taking lots of showers or doing a lot of cooking, or you just have a lot of occupants, yeah, all kinds of bad stuff can happen. So it's always good to pay attention. And I just want to make note, this is not the first time I've been talking about something like this. So this is episode 2 of Bill Spone's Building HVAC Science, back in September of 2017, IAQ and humidity with Nate Adams. This is not new. And then this is a presentation I gave at the Healthy Building Summit back in October of 2018 called The Coming Mold Explosion, because we've been noticing a whole lot more mold calls amongst my fellow home performance folks that are dealing with the hairy projects that come our way. I am going to mention we're not going to get into ducting configurations. This is a Ford versus Chevy argument oftentimes, and we're just not going to dive in. If you watch either like Nikki Kruger has some good presentations up, and then if you watch that one from Florida, they touched on it as well. So, but what I promised was ventilating dehu pros and cons. So here's the pros. It's a good fix if you aren't replacing equipment. It's a good option with hybrids. It is a magic wand for filtered and dry fresh air. It's difficult to oversize, and you can reduce thermostat wars. On the con side, the controls add complexity, and that has been a consistent frustration. Unwanted heat can come from ducts, because the dehu is going to be running when the air conditioner isn't, so there's warm air coming out of the vents in the middle of the summer, which people don't like. It's a high installed cost. These are not inexpensive, and they have relatively short lives compared to HVAC equipment if you put a new system in. So let's look at some actual projects, because we've done a bunch of work. So this is a house in the town that I grew up in, Hudson, Ohio, and this is like a Ferrari without a reverse gear, where you have to get your friends to push you out of the parking space. So this is a 5-stage variable speed inverter air conditioner. This is such a stupid piece of equipment. It shouldn't exist. It's just dumb. Like, why? But it's 4 tons, which is way too damn big for this house. So the humidity was just out of control in this house. And it's so frustrating. So it's oversized, even though it's variable speed. So variable speed will not save your butt. Okay. Like it's important to note that this is a 4-ton on a 3,000 square foot house, and it's way too damn big. And so it was a real problem. And back to sucking sucks just for a moment. This has an easy breathe in it. This is the unit here. It goes from the basement floor up, and then it goes out to the rim joist. We ended up reusing this vent outside for the intake for the dehumidifier. But this is blowing air out, which means it's sucking. Look at the bottom here. There's some dog hair in there, but there's a lot of mold. That's green. That is nasty. And I've seen a few of these things, and they pretty much all look like this. So sucking sucks. You're pulling from places that you don't want to. So here's the install. So this we did a return setup, which I know Nikki's going to be like, no, know, but whatever. We run systems where the air handler runs all the time, and this was one of the good options. But note that there's two T's in this. So there's a T on this is the return to the dehu, and then on the bottom this is the supply. So we put these T's in with dampers so that we could make sure that we could pull and then add air back to the basement. So both ways. And with the return configuration, you can't hardly read it, but this is 0.06 inches of static on the system. This is a happy machine. It's hardly working to move that air. And then that's the control inside. And then, of course, we measure darn near everything. So here's measuring what the airflow is, and it was pulling 60 CFM with a pretty short and direct duct run. And this system had fairly high static. We didn't really address that at all. It was what it was. It was the system when I got there was 8 months old. It wasn't going to get changed. And so here's Tim Portman and Kevin Kish and Zach in the middle. Tim and Kevin are good friends and HVAC 2.0 contractors, so they were kind enough to help us with this. And one really important thing we were watching for, though, was we wanted to be sure that those ducts in the basement weren't going to backdraft the natural draft water heater. So this is showing that that room is actually positive. So we balanced it that way. So this is one of, like, there's always a bunch of pain in the butt little things you have to keep an eye on. And this was one, because we did do some foam work in this basement to seal it up. So that's an example of where it's a good fix if you aren't replacing the equipment. That keeps the house dry now. Now, it's also a good option with hybrids. That actually was, kind of a hybrid. It was an air conditioner. But this is Ron. And Ron built a brand new 4,000 square foot house with a full basement, like 10 foot ceilings down there, something like that. And then this is his dehu. This house we thought should have gone electric. So we offered him a system that included a dehu that was significantly more. And he surprised the heck out of both of us and said yes to the system that cost a hell of a lot more. So, okay. The installer was fine. They took the money. That's good. But note that we have the same two ducts here into the basement so that we can balance any which way we want. This ended up being a really good thing, too. He had a flood in the basements like a month after moving in. And so while he had a restoration contractor there, I'm like, Ron, turn that thing to 35% and let it rip. It'll eventually work through all that moisture. So he had carpeted basement and they had to get it dried out quick, and this helped. So kind of a nice thing. Here's another hybrid system. Someone might have seen me post this in the past. So this is badass. So you've got the huge drop, the big filter here, the dehu's hiding over here around the corner. And this also had very low static on the system. Noise and vibrations pretty consistently an issue with these things. These compressors are kind of noisy. So we put in a little bit of flex duct here, and that helped disconnect it from the rest of the duct system. Helped out a lot. I see Tom mentioning down there, Tom Leck. We have a microclimate in San Francisco where it's very common to have 80 to 90% humidity every day in the winter with mold. Yeah, when you get to cold temperatures, dew point really matters. So we see that here too. My dehumidifiers run a lot this winter. Okay, magic wand for filtered and dry fresh air. So this is my friend Neil Comparetto holding a copy of my book. He is co-owner of the Comfort Squad in Charlottesville and Richmond, Virginia. And if you have a problem with humidity, this can be the magic wand. So just kind of like his way of putting that. But it's not a particularly cheap magic wand, as we'll get to. But it can help with the filtered and dry. So remember this slide where this is a ventilating dehu, and it's got this nearly clogged filter 6 weeks after install. And it's basically pulling soot and garbage from the highway nearby through the filter. So this is my dehumidifier in our house in Ohio. Note these filters. Here's a new one. Here's one that's been in for a little while. I'm glad this is there. I'm very glad that's there because it means that me and my family and now our guests, since it's largely an Airbnb now, aren't breathing that. So that gets changed out. And here's my daughter goofing around with some beautiful clean coal that a friend of mine sent me a few Christmases ago as a joke. Like when you're burning stuff, there's bad stuff going in the air. And so a good filter, this is MERV 13, helps catch that. So it can be a magic wand for filtered and dry fresh air. Now, it's also difficult to oversize, so you don't have to worry about getting eaten, Seymour or anything like that. And part of this is kind of a cool design, and I'm not going to dive into it, but this is the Santa Fe Ultra 155, and it works a little bit like an ERV where it runs the air streams across each other, and it helps get the incoming air cooler so that it starts dehumidifying more quickly. So in my understanding, after about 30 seconds, the Ultra 155 is already hitting dehumidification. So you don't need to run the thing for 5 or 10 minutes like you do an air conditioner before the coil gets cold enough. The coil gets cold enough very quickly. So we like to have a little extra capacity for dehumidification. So it's not that you can oversize them, but it's not as important as it is with HVAC. And then you can reduce thermostat wars. So something we notice all the time is after we do our projects, our clients bump their air conditioner set points from, say, 68 to 70, 71 to 74, 78. I had one client that set it to 80 because when you keep the air dry, the guys can be comfortable at higher temperatures because our sweat evaporates quickly. So generally, when people are looking for low set points, fundamentally, it's the guy trying to get the air dry enough that his sweat evaporates and he can be comfortable. But then the lady gets cold. That's usually what happens. It's not always that balance. Sometimes it's reversed, but usually the guy is too hot and the girl's too cold. So you can really help when you keep a house dry to reduce thermostat wars. So those are your pros. Now let's dive into the cons. So controls complexity, unwanted heat, high installed cost, and relatively short lives. So controls complexity. Remember Ron, who was also very glad that he had his dehu. Let's see the edge of it here, because he had that flooded basement. He whined at me multiple times over having 2 controls on the wall. Now, you could avoid this with some other controls that are 2-stage, but this is a communicating piece of equipment. It doesn't talk to Ultra Air stuff. I have one of the new controls. I'm actually pretty curious to try it, but I have to get up to Ohio to put it on the system. But the second control can definitely cause challenges and complaints. This is a project where when you have somebody come in to waterproof your basement and they're like, this is one of the worst ones that I've ever seen, and I do like 2 of these a day for 20 years, going and doing bids. That was this house. So this is frost forming inside his window in the middle of winter. This is really high humidity. Like you got to be running like 50, 60%, and then it's got to be cold outside, and these were crummy windows. But frost on the windows is a very, very bad sign. And so here you can see it was a little bit warmer out, but there's condensation on the window. And the window frame was 49 degrees. So that means the dew point's over 50 in the middle of winter. That's some bad news. So we offered him options of either trying to get some kind of vapor barrier on the basement floor or a dehumidifier. And he chose a dehumidifier. And by the way, basement floor, this was interior waterproofing job, is running 72% moisture content on the concrete there. That's way too freaking high. Can you tell where we put this in and turned it on? Humidity just fell off a cliff. And now he's staying down in a healthier range. But look, this is September, and his house is running in the 60s for relative humidity. That's not good. Oversized 2-stage air conditioner. The problem was he set the humidity set point to 35% and never changed it. So it ran that 24/7, 365, and it burned the compressor out 2 years later. So that sucked. Now, to Thermistor's credit, they gave no guff whatsoever and got a new unit. So, yeah, it was under warranty. It wasn't a real problem. I didn't have a good way to watch what was going on with this. And even though I told him to not run it that low, he set it that low and forgot about it and ate his machine. So controls complexity can be a problem. You want this to be controlled more automatically, if at all possible. Unwanted heat from ducts. So this is Jim's house. And look, it's another one of these stupid easy breeds, which is now gone. I hate these things. I don't think this one was super moldy. Jim is he's an engineer who's very particular. He did his own air sealing, and I tested him out, and I couldn't find mistakes in the basement. I always find a mistake in the basement when I test out with the blower door. I couldn't find any of his errors. I found one in his knee wall. There's a knee wall. This is his bedroom here, master bedroom. And if you remember the carbon dioxide house from last week, this is it. That's the room that those carbon dioxide peaks were coming from that we knocked off by running the air handler all the time. Anyway, my dogs are having fun chasing someone out there. We did two different things on this. He wanted to have extra airflow. So this is a Q-Fresh that we also put in with the dehu. I kind of regret this, but it was early on while we were figuring stuff out. This lets you set intake air between 30 and 130 CFM. So here's the unit, and it was weird how we had to install this. His mechanical room didn't have any room. So this is on the other side of the house, and so we ducted it into the return on the other side. So this is a backdraft damper so that it wouldn't go through the dehu unless the dehu was running. So this made it kind of a challenging install. And what happened was his air conditioner is too big, so it didn't run much. The dehu runs a lot, and he complained a fair amount about hot air coming out of the ducts in that side of the house, because we had not put it close to the equipment, so it didn't have a chance to go through. And whenever we have put these on like 1 or 2 stage pieces of equipment, we have had challenges with hot air coming out of the vents. So like I say, friends don't let friends buy single stage. Okay, and then also there was noise and vibration complaints that I hear about this. Another one was a habitat house that we helped with, which Ultra Air was super kind. Ken was super kind and donated a dehu to. And that client texted me and like, it sounds like there's a diesel truck idling outside my house, and it was the dehu. And I'm like, ugh. And we tried to dampen it from noise and whatnot, but it can be a little bit of an issue. And I definitely hear mine in my attic. And hey, Cam, I'm glad you made it with my buddy Cameron Taylor down in Dallas. He can out nerd me on all kinds of commercial stuff. All right, next up, high installed cost. So this is just pulled off of Sylvan.com. 3,200 for this dehu. This is one of the largest. It's the second largest. There's a 205 now. And then this is the small crawl space dehu. So 3,200 here, 1,300 here, just for the unit, plus install, plus profit, all of the other stuff that has to happen. So Jeff, what is the price range that your company usually charges for, say, the baby dehus?
45 to 55 starting out.
Okay. And does that have ductwork or anything like that?
If anything, the minimal, like you said, return to return, something small.
Okay. And on the high side, what would one of these little ones be?
You're probably going to be 8 to 10 minimum, depending on how extensive the duct system had to be. So yeah. Yep.
So you can be looking at 5 to 10 grand even for a little one. Tanner, you've put a couple of these bigger ones in. What kind of range are you usually seeing?
Yeah, for the bigger ones, I mean, really 7 to 10 is kind of for a typical install. I mean, that's your base. And really, and not only on top of that is I deal with a lot of crawl spaces and stuff. And so when the equipment's in a crawl space and you have a big unit that you're trying to fit with an already tight crawl space, well, I mean, not only does it get more difficult, but difficulty also means increase in price. So it's kind of one of those things that's like, they work great when you can fit them there, but the problem is getting them there to begin with.
I actually cut 2 windows into our house in Ohio so I could put one in. That's what it took. And whenever I want to mess with anything with it, I have to take the windows entirely back out because I was a dummy and I bought a single sash, so only one half opens. Keeps life interesting. Yeah. So that was, and they weigh like 200 pounds. This is a beast of a piece of equipment. So these are not inexpensive. And just for comparison's sake, for giggles, so here's the big Dehu. Here's a halfway decent 16 SEER heat pump, the whole thing. And like this is retail, so I mean, wholesale maybe it's wholesale-ish, but it's what they show. The 3,700 to 3,200. So the dehumidifiers, it cost not that much different from what a middle of the road heat pump is. So it's just kind of wild to see that sort of thing. And then the high-end heat pumps obviously get way more expensive, but I just thought it was interesting taking a look at that. But again, friends don't let friends buy single stage. This is single stage 16s here. Not really a great piece of equipment. But this all comes back to the question that we keep bringing up through this whole series, which is what's the best mid-price system we can install? And to me, if we are adding an extra piece of equipment that costs, 5, 10, 12 grand extra, that's probably not, ideal to keep us in the middle range of price, where people are likely to actually buy it, the fat part of the bell curve. So that is a challenge with these. It's not an inexpensive thing. And then the last piece is relatively short lives. So the basement dehumidifiers, if you take a look at them, they usually have a 1-year warranty. Thanks. It's like tail light warranty. It's good for 5 years or until you can't see my tail light anymore, whichever one comes first. So there you are. Not that great. And like typically these last 1, 2, 3 years. My in-laws have one that they run really hard. So they have it act kind of like a ventilating dehumidifier with a tight house and a single stage heat pump. And they're buying a new one of these every 18 to 24 months. Although they save their receipts, so they usually send them in for warranty. But they have to wait a few months to get a new one. Here's April Air moving to the whole house stuff. We're not generally giant fans of these because they're foreign made. And we've heard of a lot more issues with these. But this is a 5-year warranty on this. And then here's Santa Fe, which has the best warranty when they say unmatched 6-year. The challenge is a good new HVAC system should last at least 15 years, maybe 20. And so that is where the real challenge comes to. So the critical downside to ventilating dehumidifiers is that generally you're going to get somewhere between a 5 and a 10-year lifespan. You might get less if you install them wrong or you set them up wrong, like my client did by accident. So you're likely to need 2 of these fairly expensive pieces of equipment during the lifespan of a new HVAC system. So you're looking at that $5,000 to $10,000 expense, not once, but twice. And yeah, you can say the second install will probably be easier, but at that point, it wouldn't surprise me if the equipment prices and labor prices are enough that the bit that you save there gets eaten up again in a couple of years. So this is really the critical downside. So this is why we avoid them when we can, but they're still a nice tool to have. So back to the hypothesis, and hopefully I've supported this now. It's a good fix if you can't replace equipment. So you have new or newish equipment that just isn't on the table to get rid of. And Ted, you want to let Tim in? If you are replacing, strongly consider systems that have reheat dehumidification. And so next week we're going to talk about pressurization just on its own. And the week after that, we're going to talk about reheat. And we're going to go through a bunch of myths and whatnot there, pluses and minuses there. So I'll show you very real numbers of what reheat costs, because Ken and I will definitely disagree on this. In Florida, they were talking about it. He's like, no, you don't want to do that. It's not efficient. Efficiency is somewhat relative. It reminds me of one of my clients he felt guilty over having a pickup truck that he drove 2,000 miles a year. Like, dude, who cares? Like, it's an extra tool, whatever. It's the depreciation you need to worry about, not anything else. So it depends on how they're used. So efficiency is relative. Plus, if we can avoid the $5,000 or $10,000 expense once or twice, that buys a lot of electricity. I mean, most houses use something like $2,000 a year worth of electricity. So that's there. So consider reheat, which we'll talk about. And then always offer these in green grass climates. So it should be on every quote in my mind. Put that on there as an offer to client. And this comes down to, haven't really talked about this yet. So the prime directive of HVAC 2.0 is to deliver excellent experiences for both contractors and homeowners. So when you think about what we've been talking about through all of this, yeah, it's highly technical, but the highly technical is there in service of delivering good experiences for clients. Like all of our work, all of us here, that's what we are trying to do. We want to fix things for clients and make them happy, because that makes them more willing to pay you more if you're doing a good job serving them. And then they're likely to send you more people, and referrals are your least expensive source of business. So that's what you want to drive. So if you deliver great experiences, that's what you want. Now, doing that requires a very specific process on the contractor side, which is primarily what HVAC 2.0 does. So it helps keep you on the straight and narrow. So offer and decline, you've seen this slide before. What we're trying to do is responsibly avoid responsibility. So if you offer your clients options and you explain to them the pros and cons of options, and they choose poorly, they own it. In fact, here you go. You'd have to be an idiot to put money into this 27-year-old R22 system. Take my money. Okay, take the money. Just make sure you sign off. Like, there's, again, taillight warranty on this. It's like a car with 200,000 miles on it. It might make the 300. It might die tomorrow. Who knows? But the key thing is, if you do a good job of offer and decline, if they choose poorly, they own it, not you. But you have to make sure to document that too, which we do as part of the system as well.
Nate?
So, yeah.
Can I jump in real quick?
Absolutely.
So that's, I was on a ride along with Jeff today, and he actually has the perfect example for what, a dehumidifier gone bad and the problems that it might cause, and how you could use the HVAC 2.0 process to walk a client through it. So I think, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, Jeff, but maybe you can walk them through. That'll really nail, I think, what Nate has been saying. Or we could wait till you're done, Nate.
Let's wait and I can present because I need to show it.
Oh, okay. You got some pictures up
Yeah.
you can show, Jeff? All right.
Yeah, visual.
Yeah, just a couple more slides left on my part. So like I've discussed the last couple of weeks, what we do, the free quote install options offer your clients different things, and it all ties back to the 6 functions of HVAC. And this is filtration and fresh air related to what we're talking about here. So if they buy a crappy system that just keeps their 1-inch filter, they have bad filtration and there is no fresh air. The next step up has a good filter, but no fresh air. And the step after that has a good filter and then has a fresh air duct. And after that, we're suggesting you can put a ventilating dehumidifier in, or whatever you want to do. All of these are adjustable. But this gives you an idea. And here's what the whole 6 functions look like, because the first 3 are tackled by equipment and the last 3 are tackled by how you install it. So load matching, dehumidification, mixing, filtration, fresh air, and humidification. And when you see the basic system, it doesn't look too hot, does it? So like I mentioned, my friend John up in Minnesota, he's like, I am offended that you would even offer me this system. I'm like, John, you have that system. And 85% of Americans have that system. It's a piece of crap. You just didn't know it. Now you know. So offer and decline, he couldn't be mad at me. I didn't sell him the system. But all of a sudden, the good system looks a lot better, and the better looks a little better still, and the best looks better still. So this tends to pull people into higher end equipment.
While you have this slide up, can you talk about where this shows up?
Yeah. So this is after you do a free quote, there's a report that pops out, and this is I'm showing it in a different format than what you're going to see there, but this is pulling it all together so that you can see what the smiley faces are. So you can put whatever systems in, whatever options you want. You can choose which smiley faces you have. But this is what you would show them after they have been educated on what the 6 functions are. And you get them to ask questions. I've got very short videos. It's 4 minutes, which may sound long, but dude, I wrote a book and I had to cut a whole chapter down to 4 minutes. It was really hard. But it gives them an education and compares their HVAC system in their car to the HVAC system in their house, and the house comes up severely wanting. And
So one
you,
of the things that's happening is people are going crazy over this way of illustrating different HVAC choices.
Yep.
And when you talk about free quote, what do you mean free quote?
There's no consulting. We are going to like for like what you have. We're not sizing anything unless you specify what size it is, because if you don't know some other pieces of information, namely blower door and past energy use, you could be off by 1 or 2 tons easily on sizing. You could be off by 3 or 4 sometimes.
I didn't ask my question very well. A lot of people maybe don't understand what you mean by free quote. And so can you talk a little bit about how our system provides a sales process that actually walks you through the free quote and documents things like that you're going to need so that you can prove that you've responsibly avoided responsibility and that this is tied to that?
Yes. Let me see if I can switch. Share this tab instead. So this is the HVAC 2.0 contact form that this goes into my personal account. So imagine you are a client calling in or on the website or being referred by a service technician to get a quote. So you're looking for a new piece of equipment. You put your information in, but then you ask 4 questions of them, and these are kind of long, but you're trying to paint a picture for them. So parts of my house are uncomfortable or sticky in the summer. Parts of my house are uncomfortable or dry in winter. There are health concerns in my home and family, such as allergies, asthma, mold, excessive dust, blah, blah, blah. And all of these are done on a scale. So let's just go change this because I know it makes for a good demo. So I put everything in at 4, which is pretty middling. And here, actually, I'll back that down. So if you have a score of 0 to 12, it recommends a free quote because you don't really have any problems you want to solve in your house. Again, this all goes back to the client. What does the client want? It doesn't matter what you want. It's what they want. But you want to be sure that you understand what they want. So low score, this isn't working right, but it pops up a playlist and it walks them through what the comfort quiz score means, that low score, and then it puts them through the 6 functions of HVAC, talks about static pressure or duct pressure, and then explains what the free quotes and comfort consults involve. And then if you change these scores, so see down here it's saying total score 12 and low score. If I bump it up, you get to medium. And if I run it way up, it'll show high score. So this is a quiz, and it gives them different answers for what they're looking for. So you help your clients decide what path they want to, whether it's a free quote, which is we're just going to change your equipment out and move on with life, or if it's going to be a comfort consult, which is now we're consulting and we're trying to figure out how to fix stuff in your house. Is that what you're looking for, Ted?
Yeah, that and I think so that people understand there's actually a report from the free quote process that allows people to understand that even though they're getting a like for like quote, they can opt to have better features.
Yep. Yeah, and that goes back to what we were just looking at over here. So in that free quote report, that's the piece that's not done yet. So I can't show it. We did the first iteration.
It'll have basic, good, better, and best as choices for the homeowner, so that they even further are assuming responsibility for their decision, and that the contractor is even further responsibly avoiding responsibility for the homeowner's decision of the equipment that they select.
Yeah, they really are. They are buying. They are not being sold, which means they are taking responsibility for it. So again, it's all about the client. What are their goals? what does their house need, and what's the budget. This is what happens in the Comfort Console. But to some degree, it's even happening through the free quote as well. You just find out that they don't have any goals that are really worth chasing, or that they're not admitting to. And that's fine. They can always buy the system, and then when they figure out that they answered wrong, they can buy another system later. It's not perfect. It's not ideal.
It's happened. Jeff is reporting doing that kind of thing with people a lot. They're getting the wrong system, and then 6 months later, they get another system.
Yeah. Jeff's been changed out a lot of newer systems, which is wild.
And which one big point, I think, if you don't mind, if you could go back to the 6 functions slide.
I didn't put it in here. Sorry, this one though. There you go.
Yes, that one. One thing that is it's really counterintuitive to traditionally the way people have always done it. It's something that's always kind of bothered me is, the Dumbos, they just go, I've got one option for you. Now buy it. And that's the way they go about it. And then, then you have the sales gurus that come and go, oh no, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to offer 3 options. And you call it good, better, and best. And if you notice, what's the big difference in good, better, best versus this? Well, we're being very honest with, okay, there's basic, but you're getting exactly what it says as basic, which means everything sucks. It's not good. It's not going to make you feel good. This isn't your, therapy machine that sits outside your house. No, it's single stage and it sucks. Now, if you want to get an okay one, you can move up. It's not better. I mean, I guess it is better than sucking, but it's not just a simple step up from good. And so it's very transparent, it's very honest, and it's not trying to push people to just buy something that you would like them to buy. This is very straightforward. This is the differences between them. And here's a little bit of education so now you can make that decision because you're a grown-up. And we're not going to treat you like a little kid with our good, better, best nonsense and our little sales flyers to make you think that everything that we're selling is great. We don't sell bad equipment. Everything we sell is great. Oh, why should you buy the better one then? Oh, well, because it's even better than better. It's the greatest of great. We take things that are amazing and we make it even better. It's like this makes no sense.
They don't really explain what good, better, or best means when it comes down to what it's providing. They just use it sort of as this esoteric word.
Yeah. And if you really want
better is better. Come on, better is so much better. You should get better.
Yeah. And if a homeowner is really going to trip those people up, just let them give that spiel and go, okay, well, if good does everything immaculately, well, then why should I go any better than that? Doesn't it do everything? So you're telling me you sell bad equipment? Then that salesman, he'll be really screwed up. He'll be looking at his sales flyer going, shit, I don't see that on here. Where am I supposed to find that? Is there any fine print? Nope. Ah, crap.
Nate's friend thought he had best. Why would you even tell me basic? Of course I want best. Well, you got basic. Yep.
I've got a best system sitting in the barn, uninstalled in Ohio for the moment. But I know what I want. Just have to save the money to actually get it put in. But yeah, that's a key point. And Tim, you were saying about the quoting system that you had, where it was just like, so here's your SEER ratings and various things, but it's like, so it looks like the main difference between basic and best is about $10,000. It's the only difference I can see.
It didn't reiterate the good and the bad of what you're getting. It was just everything is on an even plane kind of thing. And a SEER rating is higher. It has these, sometimes you can do the predictions on how much money you'll save.
What does SEER rating even mean? Oh, that's going to save me $70 a year for that extra $10,000? Is that how I'm supposed to make this decision?
Yeah, exactly. I saw an ad when we were on vacation this past week that said, it was from an air conditioning company. It said you get the 18 SEER for 14 SEER price. And I just thought that was not a great ad because clients don't even know what that is. Why does that matter to them? And so it was the program puts out information that really doesn't apply kind of thing. It doesn't tell the whole story really.
Yeah, nobody's sitting at the bar bragging about their 18 SEER air conditioner.
Right.
Like,
or if they are,
you only got a 16 SEER air conditioner. What's wrong with
They are.
you, small penis man?
If they are, they're probably in the chat right now.
Well, it's just treating them like kids. It's listen, you don't need to know. Just trust me and buy this. You don't. Do you not want the tax credits? If you want the tax credits, sign here. Don't worry about it. Just sign. Like that's kind of the way that goes. Rather than rather telling you a bunch of nonsense about our good system that actually sucks. Here's some basic information of here's the actual differences. What do you actually want? And
Right.
treating them like adult. That's what it
would
is.
you like to be able to control? Almost nothing, or humidity, or fresh air, or all of the above?
Yep. Yeah, and that's a key thing here is going equal in relationships, being the guide rather than the hero for them. You're not here to save the day. They are the hero. You're going to educate them and train them, and then they get to go out and fight. But you're the guide. You've already been the hero. It's equal.
And you'll do a slide deck on hero versus guide for one of these.
Oh yeah, we'll do that one of these days. That's definitely a good thing. I have always loved this quote. So W. Edwards Deming, you may or may not know this guy, but if you have heard of the Toyota production system, he's the guy behind it. So Henry Ford invented the production line, and Deming basically perfected the damn thing. And one of his famous lines is, "A bad system will beat a good person every time." So this applies multiple levels in what we're talking about. So both from a sales perspective, and then also when it comes to complexity of setting things up. If you sell something that's complex to set up, what are the odds that it's going to be set up incorrectly? Or the homeowner changes something, for crying out loud. One frustration I have with my DHU in Cleveland is because there hasn't been a communicating just even a Wi-Fi control, people turn it off or change the settings, and I have no idea. So I'm very excited to have their new control for that, and that'll help. But still, a bad system will beat a good person every time. So this is one of our arguments on why not use a simpler system. So this is badass HVAC, where you aren't using a separate piece of equipment to do all of the work. So this is kind of the case that we're building through this series. And next week, we're going to talk about fear of blowing a house up, which is something I hear when I hear pressurization. We're just like, it's going to be the end of the world. We're just going to explode it. It's like putting a nuke inside. Well, we're going to dive into what that actually means from a numbers perspective and actual projects. So next week is blowing is best in messing around with our double entendres. And here's the pros and cons that we ran through. So looking to see what questions there are. Rich, I see you asked what verbiage can be used to overcome the cons of dehume. Can you clarify that question? And plus that's selling rather than offering, kind of on how you're asking the questions. So you don't have to push these things on them. You're just offering them. So like that client in my hometown with the big house and the oversized Ferrari without reverse gear, and that 4-ton 5-stage unit. He was tired of trying to keep the house dry, and he was uncomfortable. And he'd seen mold growing places. He wanted to fix those problems. So I just offered him paths forward. One of them was, let's rip out your system, because I could tell from his energy bills that he could have done a 3-ton heat pump, picked up reheat, and been done. But the system was 8 months old, so he just wasn't interested in spending $20,000 all over again. So he bought the DHU instead. So I didn't sell it; he bought it. Is what it comes down to.
Point out too on a lot of these multi-stage variable pieces of equipment.
Hey Tim, can you turn your volume up at all by chance?
Yeah. Give me a sec.
Or move your mic closer. You're hard to hear.
How's that? Better?
Yeah.
So a lot of this variable speed equipment too, I've seen charts where when they're not at max capacity, their sensible heat factor is almost non-existent. That whole humidity removal part of it is is gone. So if you oversize a variable speed piece of equipment, you are essentially, not allowing it to be able to dehumidify at all. So that's part of the reason these are needed and stuff like that. And then why it doesn't just solve your issues.
Yep. Yeah, it's a frustration I have. Like, we have never used Mitsubishi equipment, and frankly, I don't plan to ever use it because their dehumidification capabilities are so bad. And so, like, out west, it's fine. Like, I actually just helped commission one today for a client in Utah, who also has water table issues, and she has 3 inches of standing water in her crawl space. So she could use the dehumidification right now. She's got a little one running his brains out in her house. But yeah, like, too many of these newer systems have such horrible sensible heat ratios, meaning they do almost no dehumidification, almost no latent work, that you're shooting yourself in the foot, and then you're going to require the dehu. I don't want to have a magic wand.
Yeah, and some, I mean, especially in the mini split territory, there are some small, like 7,000 BTU heads that when you look at the actual literature, it's a 1 or a 0.9 sensible heat ratio. So it basically is not meant to do any dehumidification.
Yep.
But they'll just be like, hey, it's really efficient. You'll be like, oh, we're in a green grass climate, so what about dehumidification? It's really efficient. So it doesn't dehumidify? It's really efficient. Oh, that's great. You can save all that money, put it back in an account so you can fix your mold problems in 20 years. Good idea.
Yep. Cam's got a good question here. In your experience, does reheat cost less to operate than a ventilating dehu? This is an extremely difficult question to ask straight up because you need the same house with both systems. So actually, I'll be able to tell you that in my house when we get that system installed because we're keeping the dehu.
But in the meantime, you can address it by talking about some of the systems that we've tracked the annual expense of reheat.
I think that's
we're going to go through that in great detail in 2 weeks. Great detail.
It ends up not buying you a grilled cheese sandwich every month.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking $50 or $100 a year, but I don't even know if it's going to be less than that because you need someone who actually tracks how much their dehu uses, and very, very few people do that. The 155 here pulls about 800 watts when it's running, between 100 and 200 watts for the fan, and then about 600 watts for the compressor, which, considering its capacity, 600 watts for the compressor is freaking impressive, because a basic little 50 pint basement model, they pull about 600 watts running, and this is getting 2.5 times the capacity for more or less the same power. 2.5 times the capacity for like a third more power. It's an impressive machine. So don't get me wrong. I love these things. It's a wonderful tool. It should be in your toolbox. They should be offered to everyone. But it's expensive and doesn't necessarily lead to a great experience if somebody's paying $5-10 grand more than they necessarily have to on a new system.
Yeah, and also to go back to Rich's question, he followed up with cost and short life to spin to positive. In terms of verbiage, I think it's really not as much how are you trying to make something that's a con seem good when it's just, hey, we're just, like you said a million times so far, offer decline. If you're in a situation where someone just had a new system put in, it's a single stage unit and it's oversized and they have high humidity, well, guess what? You need a dehu. Unless you want to tear out the equipment and start over again. So those are your options. So there are good pros for a dehu in that situation. So rather than, think about how am I going to convince somebody of going with an option that I prefer, even though it has a few cons, think of it as more of, okay, well, I'm just going to be very transparent with here are your options. Here's what it looks like if you go this route. Here's what it looks like if you go this route. And then let them choose. So you're not having to overcome anything. You're letting the client do all, overcome things. Like people like to talk about, oh, what happens when someone, brings up, well, what about this and what about that? And they have all these, objections. And how do you overcome the objections? It's, well, you don't do any overcoming. You let the client do it themselves because they're the only ones that can. And if you think you can, all you're trying to do is coerce them into something that they probably don't want anyways. So
And then
you're not doing it right.
and owning the outcome if it's not a good outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Essentially, if your problem's humidity, do you want to reduce the humidity? You either replace your equipment, you do the dehumidifier, or you do nothing. And yes, each has a pro and a con, cost, whatever, but it's not our decision to make, Do they want to be more comfortable? Yes. Okay. Is it going to cost more money somehow? Or short lifespan, whatever your problem, your con is. Yeah, it has it, but can it fix your issue potentially now or for 5 years, 10 years? Yeah. Okay. Then you need to decide from there.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's a mindset flip. Like, you genuinely don't care what people choose. You just want to make sure that you do a good job educating them and offering the options. Because every time, if you're doing a good job of this, they're going to pick one of your options. Like, the closing ratios are very high with them going with you, because you're treating them like adults, and they feel like they're being helped and they're not being coerced or pushed. So it's a different way to come at it. That's kind of weird. And it's every time I'd go for the advanced projects that we did, because that's all I did. I'm not actually an HVAC technician. We'd sit down. Okay, so here's all your options. This. What do you want to do? And
we had a guy with a new house that wanted a hybrid. He didn't want to go straight heat pump. He was a perfect straight heat pump solution.
He was.
But he had to get a ventilating dehumidifier because by having a hybrid, he wasn't able to take advantage of the reheat that straight heat pump system would have provided.
Exactly.
So he spent $6,000 or $7,000 more for the hybrid than he would have for the heat pump. Now, granted, there are some times when the dehumidifier is going to work under very specific conditions that the reheat won't work.
Yep. Yeah, between 60 and 70 outside's a problem because there's no cooling load at all. But there's still latent work to do. So that is a challenge that reheat does not tackle currently. Doesn't mean that the controls couldn't be changed, but it doesn't do it currently. So TG asks, where does a box like the Serve 2 fit into all this? And that's a good question. Bill Spone has one of these on his house, and the Serve 2 is basically a little baby heat pump that acts like an ERV. I forget what it's. The C stands for something else. I can't remember what it is, but it acts as an ERV, but with a small compressor. It's like a refrigerator compressor, something like that. So it can actually move heat from one airstream to the other. And they're pretty cool. And it can handle dehumidification and do all of these things, but the unit itself is $6,000. We can do everything you want with about a $7,000 piece of equipment that has reheat. And you'll still need a cheap little dehu for picking up the slack when the slack happens. It does, but they do a small enough amount of work that all of a sudden the $250 units can last for 4 or 5 years instead of 1, 2, or 3.
Plus, we're convinced in most situations sucking and blowing sucks.
Yep, yeah, that too, exactly. So
you're not pressurizing the house with filtered dehumidified air, which ends up helping. Seasonal drying for your building products, keeping things from the walls from coming into the house under certain circumstances. Should we jump to letting Jeff show his?
Yeah, let's do that.
Nate,
I don't know how to do that. You,
Nate, before we jump to Jeff, there was a question earlier from Austin.
Okay.
That I was also curious about, so I was wondering if you could quickly chat about that, and then maybe Jeff can go.
Yes, this is a really good question. Do you place any type of electric damper on the ventilator dehu? Yes, we drastically prefer that. Doesn't mean you have to. But if you are sizing tightly, if you're bringing in when a heat pump is, well, any system is running on high when it's really cold out, that's when you're going to get the maximum outdoor air. And played with this on one client's house, and with the damper closing at 15 degrees, he was getting into resistance. So we are closing at 20 degrees. He was getting into resistance. I'm saying that wrong. Anyway, we made it so that the damper closed at a higher temperature, and we kept his system out of resistance because that extra load was enough to kick him there. So yeah, there's extra load, and then in the summertime, it can be nice to close the damper when it's really hot or humid outside, so that you aren't adding extra load. There we are, and that was T. It's funny, it's T. Gronus. I have no idea how to actually say your name, T. We know each other really well. And I have no idea how to say your name. What I've asked you just been like, call me T. All right, Jeff, do you have a present button at the bottom of your screen?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Screen one.
And I guess we're going to run over tonight, but this is good.
No, you have to do. Yep.
We're all going to get aboard the private jet and see what it's like to be a number one HVAC ninja.
Nate, it might be better if you shared it. We posted it on the Monday meetings on Slack.
Okay, let me go get that.
Yeah. Maybe just open the first picture and then start the share.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess number two HVAC ninja then.
Okay, now I have to figure out how to share this screen. So let me... Mm-hmm. There we go. Okay, what are we looking at, Jeff?
So this is what the entire duct system looked like in this house. 5 years old. 5-year-old brand new construction.
What are we looking at the bottom there? Looks like some kids are dropping some stuff, but what else?
It's actually growth.
It's bold.
I thought there might be green stuff.
Yep, all throughout the duct system. So I'll just keep sharing.
Doesn't it know it's not supposed to be there? You tried telling it?
Doesn't. I did. I tried telling it, and I put a blue light over it, and it didn't work.
The blue light didn't work? Oh,
Didn't
God.
work. No,
Did
we
you
didn't do
speak
anything with
extra sternly? Did you use your dad voice?
it. I did.
It was only 5 though, and those 5-year-olds, they just won't behave.
So there's another grossness of
Just for some
inside.
additional context, this is a 5-year-old new construction in a fairly wealthy neighborhood. So this is a huge place. Someone thought they took great care of building a dream for themselves, but this was still the result because they skimped out on HVAC.
Well, yeah, $1 to $2 million house. So,
Wow.
and that is
So what are we looking at here?
that's how they decided to dehumidify. So this is
Okay.
a 2-level walkout basement, and the system's in the basement. And of course, the only return's right there in that basement. So they thought
What?
a good idea would be to cut a hole into the side of that return box.
So that's a Cleveland drop or whatever you call it.
Yeah, whatever you want to call that. And then they put.
Did they
a
leave
DU
the
there.
door open to the basement, or did it not have a door by chance?
You see the door to the right there. That leaves it open to the finished portion of the basement. But
How often
that
is
was
that door
their
closed?
that was
boy.
their dehumidification for their house. Keep going, and you'll see how well it did.
It's awesome. They use one pipe too.
Yeah.
What
So
is that?
That's their catch bucket. That's their little pail. Because the duct pressure was, over an inch. Just put that humidifier on there, and all the water was just blowing off. So that's how they were catching the overflow.
Wow.
Then, of course, you can keep going to the next one here.
Is that supposed to be a return for the?
It's a
or
bath
is that-
fan. It's a bath fan.
Is it like an inline above the ceiling then, something like that?
No, they threw it up there, didn't have a cover for it, lost it, and put a grill on it.
Oh, nice.
Perfect way.
Custom.
And then all over this, yeah, there you go. And it's not just here, but pretty prevalent.
That looks like something biological.
Yeah, there's definitely some growth there for sure.
65
How old was
degrees
this
set
house?
points.
What's that?
65 degree set points.
No. So it was, 70, 72.
What size was the system?
This is a 4-ton 100K, 4,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet. 25 on
Mike's
each floor.
job. Something like that. Jeff has a guy in his company that's he's got a thing for 4-ton 100Ks. You got an 800 square foot house, you got a 5,000 square foot house, 4-ton 100K, baby. Every time. Single stage. It's going to work great.
2,500 square feet, 4-ton 100K. What you talking about?
Oh, jeez.
500 square foot a ton.
That's a letter rip tater chip situation right there.
Here from 59 Minute Air.
And I stopped by the Walmart and I got you this here dehumidifier. Let me slap it in for you. This is free of charge. We do this to our good customers, and you seem like a really nice guy. Started up. What's that jet engine? That's just it's that special add-on package. It's a race car.
That's the power right there. It's the power. We got open
Stuck
pipes,
as a
straight
Ferrari.
pipes.
We stuck extra stickers on there. That's at least 10 horsepower. You got a good one.
So 5-year-old house, Jeff. All this
Yep.
stuff is already happening. Was this a comfort consult or a free quote?
Comfort console. You can go on to the next. There's a couple more pictures. A little hard to see there in the corner, but the next one as well. So zoom in there. All the actual fixtures in the lower level of the home were completely rusted. So if you zoom in on that,
Whoa.
and it was going down there you go.
Well, it's obviously cheap fixtures. Duh.
Yeah, all the fixtures problem, right?
Okay,
Definitely the picture's fault.
That's crazy.
that's actually disturbing. Like, I've never seen this before. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff, and I have never seen anything like this. Do they have an
insane.
air quality monitor now so they can watch their humidity levels, or do you think this was dripped on from above? Do you know where this water source was?
This is they ended up, so what they did is they had I offered, dehumidifier moving to the house, and they're like, hell no. We're buying this house and we're going to go get everything we can off of it after we have you do a comfort consult. But I've done many homes for this client. So I didn't have to do anything. She had all the answers she wanted. So did the comfort console, but ripped out the ceiling and actually found leakage in between the rim joists and airflow leaking around the bath fans, obviously coming back. So high dew point on a lake.
What's it? With the basement sucking that hard?
Yeah.
So there was no return anywhere in the house. So like
There was
they're
just that
doing all
one
kinds of
big
crazy
return.
stuff.
Yep.
Um,
Just right through the wall. Big return.
Did she save a lot of money on the house because of you?
She did. She actually went back and got about 100K off of the house and took all of that and reinvested it right back into the house. So ripping out the ceilings and doing all HVAC and everything. So ductwork, air sealing, so on and so forth.
Is this set of pictures, does this include the new design as well?
It doesn't have the new one on here right now.
Yep.
I can share that later. I didn't get a great picture.
you can show next week, but
Yeah.
if you hear a crash, that is my jaw repeatedly hitting my desk here. Like, what the hell? I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff. I've never seen this. So it was probably so negative that when it was high dew point outside, it was sucking on all that humid air coming through. It was cold enough in there. It was condensing and doing all of this. So this
Pulling
is a
everything
combination of
from
air
the
leakage, but
basement.
mainly bad HVAC.
Yeah, pulling everything from the basement, from the return, right through with all that, like you said, negative pressure.
This is why you don't want to suck, guys.
Yeah.
Sucking sucks. Here's prime example. Holy cow.
And DU
Jeff.
didn't work, so
Yep.
There's another one. Wow. Man, I've seen an awful lot of crazy stuff between personally and seeing what other people have worked on, and I have never seen anything like that before. Wow. Yes, yeah, so dehumidification alone ain't going to do it. Although I have to say, the little bit of pressurization would take the edge off of that. Take out 50 CFM if it's a 4-ton system. So, what, 1,400, 1,600 CFM pulling negative on that place all the time? That sounds like Terry, a friend I was telling you about, looks like Doc from Back to the Future, and that wealthy person's house in Chicago with a private chef, where their range hood had basically done the same sort of thing. But I've never seen rusty light fixtures like that. 5 years old, enough moisture to rust them. All right, you're done. Mic drop.
Yeah, nice way to close that out. Should we end?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much there. Do we have any other comments that we should address?
It was very kind of this Indianapolis house to suck so badly for this to be a teachable moment for me.
You came at a really good time. You
I
showed up
certainly
in
did.
your private jet just right.
I did indeed, yeah. A 22-hour private jet from Manitoba, from Winnipeg. Yeah.
Wow. So T is asking Jeff, did you look at this with a thermal camera? Did you have any?
it was no, when I got called out there first because she was having an inspection on it, so it was just a initial consultation, visit out, let's do a visual. Once we started looking around, we saw some things, and then it was she's like, "Nope, I need you to do your thing." So, and that's where it led from there.
Jeff's done a number of houses for this woman.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's just wild. Well, that's a hell of a way to end right there.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yep. So next week we'll be talking about pressurization, which, so the opposite of what you're seeing here, might as well just kind of drop this hint. If you are keeping the air inside the house drier than it is outside, and you are very gently pushing that air out of the house, what's it likely to do to building materials? The exact opposite of what we just saw on that light fixture. It's going to tend to dry it out. And it can be a challenge in the winter if you're humidifying the house and pushing it in. But most climates 9 months a year are dehumidification season. So, yeah, dang. Tim, did you have something to add? Saw you flip your hand for a second there. All right. That's a good way to end. So next week we're talking about pressurization and are we actually effectively putting a nuclear bomb inside of our homes when we install a ventilating dehumidifier or something else? Or is it not a bad way to go? And then we'll end in 2 weeks with a series on talking about reheat, and I'll show a bunch of actual projects and we'll look at the actual energy usage from it. And we can find out if, we're going to keep kids from going to college because of those energy bills. So with that, thanks everyone for coming and commenting, and we will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Good night, all.
Good night.